She's an analyst, she's a policymaker, she's worked and focused on peacekeeping in conflict-ridden countries. She is now the president of a think tank called International Crisis Group. I'm being joined by Comfort Ero. Thank you so much, Comfort, for joining me here on India Today Global. Let's begin with the fact that there are too many conflicts that we are witnessing today. How are you looking at the recent conflict between US, Israel and Iran when it comes to the level and the severity of the conflict? How are you monitoring the situation?
Thank you for inviting me to be interviewed. I think this is the highest escalation because it's a war on several fronts now. At the start of the year, we produced what we call 10 conflicts to watch. And on that list, we had the likelihood of tensions escalating between the US and Israel versus Iran and its axis of resistance in the region. And so this is the highest level. And the question now is how you bring this war to an end that is not just facing Iran, but it's the neighborhood, including the Gulf countries as well.
We've seen various levels of escalation in the past few days. How are you looking at the escalation when it comes to now desalination plants being hit, which could lead to massive humanitarian crisis if this continues?
I mean, yes, this is quite a critical juncture because it's clear that it's not just about hitting military infrastructure, bringing down launchers, the ballistic missiles, or even trying to destroy Iran's nuclear capacity. And over the weekend, receiving news about hitting the desalination sites. And this will have a rippling effect in a number of countries. Bahrain, for example, Iran that already suffers from water shortages, undermining the ability for countless civilians to get access to water in a country that suffers this critical degradation in its infrastructure as well. And then you're going to see, countless civilians fleeing across borders. And at the start of the conflict, you just seen the very first weekend, this targeting, a very unfortunate, tragic targeting of the school where countless girls, for example, died. So not only are we watching the attacks against military infrastructure, but now the dangerous signs that both Israel and the US are now targeting non-military infrastructure.
Well, in terms of the violations, how comfort do you see the violations that we're looking at when it comes to international rules-based order, particularly from the US and Israel, and the violations that have occurred during this war?
Quite frankly, President Trump has already told us to judge him not by international law, not by the United Nations Charter, but to hold him to account by his own morality. And in fact, to make it even more clearer and to make it even starker in terms of the world that we're living in now, his own Deputy Chief of Staff, Stephen Miller, in the few days after the seizure of Maduro from Venezuela, reduced international law to international niceties and made it clear that we're now in an area of might is right, where brute force is acceptable. The administration, unlike President Trump's predecessors, even when you look back at a situation like Iraq, which was already a clear violation of international law, there was an attempt even by President Bush to make a case within the confines of international law. Now there's no pretense that we're in an era where it's the US's own rules that will shape and guide how it performs on the international community. And it's less about what others think, but more about Trump's morality. So it's a dangerous new world where there are no orders, no rules. It's going to be very hard to ask other states to comply with an already fractious international framework. And you'll have heard yourself at the start of this year when Prime Minister Mark Carney said that we're now in this new world of rupture, more fragmentation and less care for the standards that would bind states together.
The objectives and goalposts in this war have changed, shifted, and the fact that from the fact that they wanted regime change, now they're looking at nuclear, then ballistic missiles. In your appreciation, can the regime really be toppled in the manner in which the US and Israel think that they can, and in the way that they're doing it or going about it?
I think it's still, the objectives, the rationale, the scope of this conflict changes day by day, certainly on the US side. On the Israeli side, I think it's pretty clear. And Prime Minister Netanyahu made it very clear himself that, he's been on this enterprise for regime change, for state collapse, for bringing pain and suffering onto Iran. He's been on this trajectory for over 40 years as well. So there's a sense in which there's clarity on the Israeli side in terms of what the end game is. There is less clarity on the US side because President Trump himself gets to shape and define what the objectives are. And at any moment, he can decide that we have achieved our accomplishments, i.e. we've decapitated, we've further obliterated Iran's nuclear capacity. You'll remember he said this at the end of the 12-day war last year, and that was his sense of victory. So the question we always have to come back to is, what is Trump's own definition of success in Iran? What will he define as victory? Is it about the nuclear capacity? Is it about the ballistic missiles? Is it about regime change? And in a sense, the death, the assassination of Khomeini could already constitute some kind of victory for President Trump. So we have to watch this space to see how Trump defines victory or success in Iran. And it changes every day. And also, we've gone from this war could be over within days to it could be over within the next four weeks. We could continue to fight in 100 days. But this also makes it more dangerous. It makes it difficult. And when you think about the consequences, I think one of the worrying signs is how rapidly this has escalated in an already precarious region that is already trying to deal with the Gaza conflict.
Comfort, if I could just circle back to my previous question, do you think a regime change is possible with such an operation that you see being carried out?
Well, I mean, no. I mean, look, you can't regime change from the skies. And by the way, again, because the president is always musing about something, he's quite transparent in terms of his mindset and what he's thinking about. He's already mused about the possibility of ground troops and deploying ground forces into Iran. What would be the purpose of that? Also, you heard Israeli officials have already made it clear that they would get rid of whoever is chosen as the supreme leader. So the new leader is already a marked man as well. The question is whether Israel and the US are going to be aligned throughout this conflict, because regime change could mean something very different for President Trump. A good indication of that is what happened in Venezuela, which in the end you got some kind of like regime light outcome. So there was taking out Maduro, so you got a Maduro-less government, and Delcy Rodriguez and President Trump has made it clear on several occasions already since this crisis started that he wanted to have a Delcy Rodriguez type model as an outcome for Iran. What does that look like? This is a more entrenched, more emboldened structure. The idea that you can get that kind of outcome in Iran is to underappreciate and underestimate the nature of the revolutionary structure that binds Iran from the supreme leader to the Revolutionary Guard and to other militia groups in the country as well.
Okay, is there a time frame that you could give? How are you looking at it? The oil prices have hit over $100. In such a scenario, do you see a prolonged war or one that will end sooner because of international pressure? given the economic situation? What's your reading? What's the reading of ICG?
I mean, again, I think, one has to look at this from how Trump reads it. I mean, he will define the nature of the exit. And the question is whether he will be aligned or whether Netanyahu will be aligned with him. He's already dismissed or said short-term pain around rising oil prices. Of course, it will be the ordinary, less advantaged Americans that will suffer from the spike and surge in oil prices. And I think what will be acutely at the back of President Trump's mind will be the midterm elections. Of course, that will be part of his calculations. By the way, it was the stock markets that did it in Greenland, so I think we should pay attention to that fact as well. And then for the rest of the world, well, we've already seen some of the consequences, some of the ramifications and the fallout. I'm talking to you here in India, and already I've heard a number of Indian economists talk about, we've only got 50 more days left of reserves, for example, for gas. We've seen already the pain that will be felt by other Asian economies and European economies as well. So, President Trump may be able to ride it for a couple of more weeks, but when it starts hurting at the gas pumps, then I think there will be other factors that may decide his own exit strategy or the nature of the end game as well.
My final question to you. There are attacks that are taking place from US and Israel into Iran, and Iran retaliating and in response attacking various West Asian or the Arab countries, the GCC countries particularly. So in such a scenario, how do you look at the fact that there are certain attacks that are being reported of not having originated from Iran? Cyprus is one such case. Are we looking at false flag operations? How has ICJ read into these cases, these incidents? Are they false flag operations being carried out by Israel to get others involved?
Look, we are, I mean, what also makes this war complicated, like any other war that we're seeing in the 21st century, is the increasing misinformation and, false narratives that we're seeing out there. Iran itself has denied a number of these claims, whether it's in relation to Turkey or Cyprus, which forced the UK to get engaged, and even in relation to the Straits of Hormuz. So I think one of the complicating factors here is the war of narratives and the communications, the denials or the counter claims by the US that they, for example, were not the ones who hit the school in the early hours of the war. As well. So I think this adds to the complication. And also, this is a war that is taking place in the age of social media. And everybody is going to use different kind of tactics and narratives to either claim that one side or the other has committed the most heinous of crimes. The fact is, we are now in a war of choice taken by President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and they now have to think about how they roll this back and how they contain what could be a dangerous, even more dangerous conflict that's whose rippling effects go way beyond the Middle East, the Gulf regions, and into the Asia region, and into the southern parts of Europe and on the Mediterranean. We already saw what happened with Azerbaijan, for example. So the strategy now has to be how to bring this to an end.
Comfort Ero, thank you so much for joining us here on India Today Global. Thank you.